How to identify motivated sellers and get a great deal in the current real estate market. I'm going to give you guys tips, things that you can do yourselves, and things a great buyer's agent will do to help you identify that low hanging fruit or sellers who have flagged themselves as open to negotiate and get a deal done. So let's first discuss how you yourself can source motivated sellers. So whatever platform you're choosing, whether it's Zillow, House Sigma, Listed's really great, or Realtor.ca, all of these platforms source their data from the one MLS IDX. So neither of these platforms has homes that the other platform does not have. They're all pulling from the same data. But there's one thing I want you to look for that will definitely red flag those motivated sellers, and that is a high days on market coupled with price corrections, especially if the days on market is over 30 days. So when we find a home with a high days on market, it means that the listing is most likely now being looked at as a stale listing. So a lot of other buyers will think maybe there's something wrong with it, or that the seller may be desperate and willing to accept a lowball offer. However, high days on market with no price corrections is actually most likely a very unmotivated seller. You need to make sure that the high days on market is coupled with those price corrections. So this seller that has a high days on market with no price corrections is actually quite unmotivated. They've shown no signs to do what it takes to get the property sold. They're most likely stuck on their price and they're not willing to really lower it or negotiate all that well. So definitely avoid these high days on market. It's not always a 100% guarantee, but these are usually unmotivated sellers. So when we find a seller that has a high days on market with multiple price corrections, we see somebody who is highly motivated because they're doing what it takes to get the property sold. They're also chasing the market down. So this is somebody who absolutely is probably willing to work a deal with you. This is someone you definitely want to work with. So high days on market with multiple price corrections, motivated seller. Now, the second thing you can look for is a tenanted property. So how do we identify a tenanted property? Well, we want to look for listings that have terrible listing photos. So properties that are tenanted are very difficult for the seller to market. So you can take advantage of this seller's poor marketing and lack of interest in the property. So a lot of other buyers will avoid these tenanted properties and go and look elsewhere. But being the smart buyer that you are going to definitely at least take a look at these tenanted properties, do your due diligence. If the tenant is all paid up and just somebody who doesn't want to have photos and videos taken of their home, you are likely going to be able to get a deal on this property because the seller may be forced, if you're their only option, to get a deal done with you. I'm going to give you guys an example of what to look for when I say bad list photos. So here's an example of a property in Orangeville. There's only two potentially iPhone photos, so this could be a great opportunity, potential tenanted property here. I'm going to give you guys a tip on one thing to actually avoid in your MLS search, and that is an offer date scenario. So in this situation, the agent has actually underpriced the property in an attempt to drive interest and create a bidding war. Now, it's not very common in this hot buyer's market that we're in right now. However, if you do find a property where the price seems just too good to be true, you definitely want to look out and make sure it doesn't have an offer date scenario. So usually this scenario occurs within the first 7 to 10 days of a listing hitting the market, where the agent will be withholding offers until a specific date. Now, if the property has been listed over 2 weeks on the market, there's a good chance that the offer date scenario is not going to apply and you could still get a good deal on this property. So now I'm going to give you guys something a great buyer's agent can do for their client, and that is we can filter something called brokerage remarks. So the brokerage remarks are something only agents can see on our view of the MLS, and it's basically agent to agent instructions on the listing. Now, they don't always contain special words that will help tip us off to motivated sellers. However, there are a lot of key phrases that agents will use with the permission of their seller client to help flag their homes as open for negotiation, motivated seller. So they will put in phrases like motivated seller. They will also put in things like immediate sale required, any offers welcome. All of these types of terms can be searched and filtered to help our clients identify motivated sellers. I'm going to show you guys with a screen share exactly what I mean. Hopping straight into the MLS, I'm going to give you guys an example of how I would filter out my brokerage remarks to help a client identify some motivated sellers. So I'm just going to put in these key phrases, and you can see the search results start to populate immediately with listings that contain these terms in their brokerage remarks. So these are great opportunity properties for buyers that are specifically looking to get a deal or, work with a seller who has great motivation. So the listing agent is putting these terms in for a reason. So these are great opportunities. So another thing we can filter is the seller or owner name on our MLS view, and we can search for bank-owned properties. Now, bank-owned properties are a completely different ballgame. They take on a lot more risk for a buyer because these are properties that are usually sold as is. The photos aren't always great. It's a totally different scenario. However, you can definitely haggle with a bank differently than you can with a very emotional seller. So if you are a buyer who is looking to get a great deal and you're willing to take on that risk, you can definitely look up bank-owned properties. I'm going to show you guys in a screen share exactly what that looks like. Jumping right back into my MLS, I'm going to show you guys how I would filter the seller or landlord name to show me bank-owned properties. So you can see my key terms here and all the properties that have populated in my MLS that contain these in the seller landlord name. So great opportunity for a bank property. Now, while you can be a lot more aggressive with a bank, there's still a limit to what they would be willing to accept. However, if you find a bank-owned property with a very high days on market, good chance you're going to get a great deal on this property. Now, my last tip is something you definitely want your agent to do for you before you go on showings. This is key. It's very important that you do this before you look at the property, and that is have your agent call and speak to the listing agent and ask about the motivation of their seller. So you're definitely going to be a little bit digging here to find out exactly what type of person are we dealing with, a sane, rational person, and what you're looking to hear is the phrase, bring me something. This is basically the listing agent giving you permission ahead of time to bring them any and all offers. What it does is when we speak to an agent before we go on a showing, they definitely are approaching the buyer's agent with a more relaxed attitude. The client hasn't even seen the home yet. And if that listing agent tells you to bring them something, they're giving you permission so that later on, after you've seen the property, they can't really get as mad now when you make them your best offer below market value, can they? They've given you permission ahead of time to bring them something. Now, it's key you do this before you go and look at a property because if you've shown your client a home and you're calling the agent afterwards to dig for information about the seller and try to, get some leverage in the deal, the listing agent will know that they have you on the hook, they hold all the leverage, and they're definitely going to clam up and not give you as much information. Now, obviously, if you're searching the MLS yourself as an interested buyer, you can feel free to contact agents. Just keep in mind, the listing agent already has a client, the seller. They work for the seller. Their job is to get the seller the best price and terms on this property. They are not looking to find the best home for you. They are looking to sell this specific property. They work for the seller. Everything you say and tell them, they will report back to their client. They have a fiduciary duty to promote and protect the rights and best interests of their client, and that's not you. Now, is this a lot of extra work for the buyer's agent? Of course it is, but it's worth making these phone calls before you go on a showing so that the listing agent will be a lot more open and you're looking for them to tell you to bring them something. Okay, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it empowered you to get out there, find motivated sellers, and get a great deal. Now, if you are looking for a property in 2025, but you're not just ready yet to connect with an agent, feel free to check out my helpful buyer guide. I've linked it in the description down below as well as in the comments. It's a great place to get started. If you guys found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, join my real estate page, and follow along as I empower you to make smart buying and selling decisions.